Did you know Tide has been upgraded to provide an even better clean in cold water? Tide is specifically designed to fight any stain you throw at it, even in cold. Butter? Yep. Chocolate ice cream? Sure thing. Barbecue sauce? Tide's got you covered. You don't need to use warm water. Additionally, Tide Pods let you confidently fight tough stains with new Coldzyme technology. Just remember, if it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to entertain my kids without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids started using it right away and haven't stopped since. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more at no screens or ads. Now through December 1st, Yoto is having its biggest sale of the year. Check out yotoplay.com.
You know what's wild? Most people are still overpaying for car insurance just because it's a pain to switch. That's why there's Jerry. Jerry's the only app that compares rates from over 50 insurers in minutes and helps you switch fast with no spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Before you renew your car insurance policy, do yourself a favor. Download the Jerry app or head to jerry.ai/ACAST.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to entertain my kids without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids started using it right away and haven't stopped since. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more at no screens or ads. Now through December 1st, Yoto is having its biggest sale of the year. Check out yotoplay.com.
If you're a smoker or vapor ready to make a change, you really only need one good reason. But with Zyn nicotine pouches, you'll discover many good reasons. Zyn is America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Plus, Zyn offers a robust rewards program. There are lots of options when it comes to nicotine satisfaction, but there's only one Zyn. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and welcome to the Whispering Woods After Dark. I've got a really interesting story today. This story does involve death and fire, so listener discretion is advised. I'll get straight into it, but before we do, I need to say a very quick hello to Jade Joycey, who has subscribed to the Obscurata tier. Now, I know this makes little sense at the moment because we have now swapped over and we're calling these episodes After Dark. But thank you so much, Jade, and I know that I missed you out and I'm really, really sorry. Are you ready for the story? A piercing scream shattered the cold January air. Sarah Kirby dropped her water bucket as she raced back toward her cottage on Hargreaves Terrace in West Yorkshire. Bursting through the door, she was met with an infernal sight. Her 4-year-old daughter, Amy, was engulfed in flames from head to toe. Orange firelight danced off the walls as the little girl shrieked. Sarah lunged forward, dousing Amy with the fresh well water. Steam hissed and rose around the child's tiny frame, but the flames had already done terrible damage. Neighbours rushed in at the commotion. One later recalled seeing flames a yard high leap from the burning child. It all happened so fast, as if Amy had ignited the moment her mother's back was turned. Sarah frantically smothered the last embers on Amy's smouldering dress, her heart pounding in disbelief and terror. Outside, Clutching the badly burned Amy, Sarah stumbled onto the snow-dusted lane, yelling for help. Just then, she saw another figure sprinting up the steep path toward her. It was a neighbour from down in the valley, waving her arms and shouting something that Sarah struggled to process through the haze of panic. The neighbour's face was ashen. She was yelling Sarah's other daughter's name, Alice. There had been a horrible accident. 5-year-old Alice Ann, Sarah's eldest, was also on fire. Sarah's mind reeled. Alice was a mile away at her grandmother's house in the valley hamlet of Sowerby Bridge. Yet the neighbour was insisting that at almost the exact same time Amy went up in flames, Alice Ann had spontaneously caught fire too. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. Moments ago, she had watched one daughter burn. Now she learned her other little girl had met the same fate at the same time, under a different roof a mile apart. The coincidence was nearly impossible to comprehend. Just minutes earlier, that morning of January the 5th, 1899, the Kirby family's routine had seemed ordinary. Sarah and her husband, John Henry Kirby, were living separately, estranged for a few months, so their children were split between two homes on opposite sides of the Calder Valley. 4-year-old Amy stayed with Sarah in a hilltop row house on Hargreaves Terrace, while 5-year-old Alice Ann lived with her father John and grandmother Sarah Kirby at 45 Wakefield Road in the valley below. The stone houses were within sight of each other across a steep ravine, connected by a zigzagging road called Fall Lane. On that bitter winter morning, both households had a fire lit in the hearth to ward off the chill, a commonplace necessity in 1890s Yorkshire, but one fraught with danger. Victorian homes often warm themselves with open flames, and children's clothing could ignite in an instant. Tragically, such accidents were not uncommon in those days. Newspapers frequently recounted children fatally burned by hearth fires, though never two siblings on the same day. Around 11 a.m, a chain of mundane events set the stage for disaster. In the cottage up on the ridge, Sarah had left Amy playing near the hearth with her two baby siblings, aged just 3 and 18 months, while she hurried out to fetch a pail of water from the community well. She was gone only 2 minutes, but that was enough. Upon returning, Sarah was greeted by the nightmare of Amy ablaze. There were no spilled lamps, no overturned candles, no sign of what sparked the fire. In fact, little Amy was known to be afraid of fire. Her father later testified that she would even scold her younger siblings if they got too near the fireplace. How then had Amy's clothes erupted into flame so suddenly? Sarah had no time to wonder. She acted on the instinct to save her child. Down in the valley at number 45 Wakefield Road, Alice Ann's morning had been quiet until then. The 5-year-old wasn't feeling well and had been allowed to sleep in. Her grandmother, Susan, tended the household, believing Alice would stay asleep until noon. Susan stepped out around 10:30 a.m. to visit her adult daughter, who lived a few doors away, leaving Alice alone in bed for a short while. A neighbour across the street, Miss Phoebe Ramsden, later recalled noticing an unusual kind of light flickering in the Kirby house sometime between 10:30 and 11 o'clock. Curiosity turned to horror as Mrs. Ramsden peered through the window. The glow danced erratically from room to room, then resolved into a terrible sight. Little Alice appeared, stumbling toward the door, her small hands visible through sheets of flame inside the house. The child's nightdress had caught fire, and she was completely alight, panicking and unable to see through the flames. Neighbours shouted and sprang into action. Several men and women rushed into the smoke-filled house, wrapping Alice in a rug and a heavy mat torn from the floor to smother the fire. They carried the badly burned girl out into the cold air as she gasped for breath, her nightdress charred away to nothing but a few scraps and the garters at her knees. Amid the commotion, one witness heard Alice Ann whimper, "Let me drink a right lot," a pitiable plea for water from the scorched child. Neighbours ran for help. One of them bolted up the steep 4 lane to alert the family on the hill. Even as Sarah was already running down that same lane to find aid for Amy. It was on this winding road that Sarah and the messenger met in the middle. Around 11:30 a.m, each bringing word of the other little girl's fiery calamity. The community mobilised quickly. A horse-drawn ambulance was summoned, and soon both sisters, still alive but gravely injured, were en route to the Royal Halifax Infirmary. The girls had suffered terrible burns over most of their bodies. Doctors did all they could, but the injuries were simply too severe for Victorian medicine to remedy. Little Alice Ann succumbed to her burns by 3 that afternoon, and Amy followed her sister to the grave before midnight that same day. The official cause of death for both was recorded bluntly as shock from burns by her clothes accidentally getting on fire. In the span of a single dark day, 2 young lives were extinguished in flame, and a family was left in bewildered grief. News of the bizarre double tragedy spread quickly through the mill towns of West Yorkshire. An inquest was convened with unusual haste the very next day, January the 6th, 1899, perhaps owing to the disturbing and sensational nature of the case. District Coroner William Barstow led the inquiry, held at the hospital with a local jury impanelled. As he opened the proceedings, even the seasoned coroner remarked on the uncanny situation. "These burning cases are sadly too frequent," Mr. Barstow noted sympathetically. "They generally come one at once, but to have 2 together in a family is both remarkable and distressing." The Kirby sisters' father, John Henry, was the first to provide testimony. Grief-stricken and in shock, John had little light to shed on how either fire started. He'd been away at work that morning at the Halifax gasworks, but his testimony did include one telling detail about the girls' personalities. When asked if his daughters were known to play with fire, John explained that it was very rare. In fact, cautious little Amy has whipped the younger children when they have gone too near. The implication was clear. Amy was the least likely of his children to fall with flames. This only deepened the riddle of how the child had ended up immolated. Next, the inquest heard from Sarah Kirby, the girl's mother. Sarah recounted how she had left Amy for only a brief moment to fetch water. Importantly, she clarified that Amy had not been completely alone in the house. Her 2 younger siblings were with her in the room when the fire broke out. Those toddlers, barely 3 years and 18 months old, fortunately managed to scramble behind a chair and survived unhurt while their sister burned. Sarah testified that Amy always kept her distance from the hearth and had never caused trouble with matches or fire. Nothing in the cottage seemed amiss on Sarah's return, except the inexplicable blaze consuming her child. There were no burned matches, charred paper, or spilled oil anywhere that might explain the ignition. The room itself was undamaged, aside from the area around Amy. A fire had begun and been confined entirely to the child's clothing, as if the flames had clung only to her. This detail would later fuel whispers of a fire that started from within. Attention turned to the parallel incident at grandmother's house. Susan Kirby, still shaken with guilt, admitted she had left little Alice unsupervised for perhaps half an hour, a lapse she'd never imagined could end in tragedy. Susan confirmed something that gave a possible clue. Unlike Amy, Alice Ann had a mischievous fascination with fire. The grandmother sighed that Alice would stir the fire up and throw paper in to make it blaze when no one was watching. The child had even been scolded and spanked for this habit in the past. That morning, Alice had been left in bed sick, but perhaps she awoke, found herself alone, and couldn't resist approaching the fireplace. Did she poke at the coals or play with a brush near the flame as she'd done before? It seemed a plausible scenario, yet Susan swore she had left no matches within reach, and neighbours testified they found no obvious fire-starting materials near Alice after the accident. Not that such evidence would necessarily remain. Tellingly, the rug that might have contained dropped matches or paper had been yanked up and wrapped around Alice's body during the rescue efforts. In the chaos of saving the child, any item that sparked the blaze could have been moved or destroyed. One of the most compelling witnesses was Miss Phoebe Ramsden, the neighbour who had first spotted the fire through the window. She described how an uncanny light drew her attention to the Kirby house around 10:45 that morning. It glowed and shifted in an odd way. At first, Phoebe thought Mrs. Kirby, the grandmother, was burning something in the fireplace, creating a strange flame. Then the light moved away from the hearth, deeper into the room. Hearing intently, she suddenly realised the awful truth. The light was Alice Ann herself on fire. Then I saw the child's hand through the flames, Mrs. Ramsden said, voice trembling. Her nightdress was on fire. The child had been trying to get to the door. The jury sat in stunned silence at the image of the little girl, ablaze and stumbling blindly for the exit. Phoebe detailed how she and other neighbours ran to help, smothering the flames with rugs and carrying Alice outside coughing and gasping for air. When pressed by the coroner, Miss Ramsden confirmed she saw no sign of how the fire began. No scorched paper, no lamp overturned, no stray embers outside the grate. Of course, the child might have sat close to the fire, or she may have been playing with the fire. That we can't tell, she admitted honestly. The only tangible evidence was how completely the fire had ravaged Alice's clothing. The nightdress was completely burned off. Oh yes, Phoebe shuddered. There was only the garters above the knees, and a little of the stockings. Such total consumption of the garment by flames was chilling to imagine, especially in the span of just a minute or two. After hearing all the testimony, Coroner Barstow summed up the situation with evident perplexity. It was, he observed, very strange that two children of the same family should be fatally burned at the same time in different locations, one with her mother, the other with her grandmother. And yet, he said, if the jury believed the witnesses, they had little choice but to conclude it was a horrible coincidence. There was no hint of foul play or anything supernatural in the evidence, just the presence of an open hearth in each home, and two small children left briefly on their own. The coroner gently chastised the practice of leaving young children unattended even for a short while, noting that tragedies like these were sadly too common in homes with open fires. The jurors struggled with the enormity of the coincidence. We have no evidence to show how the fire occurred in either case, one juryman commented, almost in disbelief. Another juror muttered that surely the girls must have been playing with the fire to end up like this. Yet no one truly saw either child do so. In the end, the jury delivered a straightforward, if unsatisfying verdict: accidental death for both Alice Ann and Amy. Officially, they became two more tragic cases of children fatally burned by household fires. Their files marked close as mere mishap. Unofficially, people whispered there had to be more to the story. The Kirby family, numb with grief, moved through the next step as if in a nightmare. With grim efficiency, the two sisters were buried together only 2 days later, at 9 o'clock on the morning of January the 7th, 1899. Their small coffins were laid into the frozen ground at Sowerby Bridge Cemetery, on a hillside not far from where they died. Then came another blow. Sarah and John's wish was to inter Alice and Amy in the Kirby's family's purchased burial plot, a space consecrated by the church. But the local church authorities refused to allow the girls' burial in consecrated ground. Instead, Alice and Amy were consigned to an unconsecrated patch of the cemetery in an unmarked grave. The devout Kirby family, this decision was devastating. Sarah, only 27 years old and now bereft of her two eldest children, was deeply upset by what felt like a repudiation by the church she faithfully attended. Decades later, a relative recalled, they were very religious and already owned a family plot, and being denied a Christian burial for the girls added greatly to their sorrow. Some locals speculated as to why the church might shun the Byrne sisters. The timing and inexplicability of the deaths made people uneasy. A superstitious murmur arose. Had the girls been touched by something unholy? The fact that they were laid in unconsecrated earth, usually reserved for those outside the Church of England, fed wild talk that perhaps the vicar feared the deaths were linked to the devil, witchcraft, or some curse, as if two little girls catching fire could only be explained as flames from hell. In truth, unconsecrated ground was simply where non-Anglicans or unbaptized folks were interred, and it turned out the Kirby family plot was in that section because they weren't Church of England members. There was no official church ruling of evil in the girls' deaths, but once the seed of that idea was planted, it spread quickly in the community's imagination. In the days following the tragedy, curious crowds began gathering in Norland and Sowerby Bridge. According to family law, people from far and wide came trudging up Ball Lane to stare at the two houses where the fires had occurred. The coincidence was all anyone could talk about. Neighbours exchanged theories, and newspapers carried short reports that tried to make sense of the story. The local Halifax Courier ran a sober headline: "Sisters fatally burnt at Sowerby Bridge. Singular coincidence." The article duly recounted the basic facts: 2 sisters, same morning, separate fires, and noted that while fatal burn accidents were sadly frequent in that era, the simultaneous nature of this double tragedy was astonishing. Other regional papers picked up on the tale, and soon the Kirby sisters' fate was the stuff of Victorian headlines. For the most part, the 1899 news coverage treated it as a freak coincidence, a tragic fluke of fate rather than a supernatural mystery. But that seed of doubt, that gnawing question of how could this possibly happen, persisted in the public consciousness long after the charred floors were scrubbed and the funerals concluded. As years turned to decades, the memory of Alice and Amy Kirby might have faded into local lore, a sad cautionary tale of children and fire, if not for the occasional resurrection of their story. Family members certainly never forgot. Sarah Kirby went on to have more children in later years, but she often spoke of Alice Ann and Amy with sorrow, wondering aloud what really happened that fateful day. "We never got to the bottom of what happened," Sarah admitted in her old age, still haunted by the mystery. The uncanny double death of the Kirby sisters remained an open wound, an unanswered question passed down through generations. Then, in the spring of 1985, 86 years later, the Kirby case leapt back into the spotlight. A reporter for the local paper, now the Halifax Evening Courier, stumbled upon the old story and evidently sensed its lurid appeal. On April the 13th, 1985, the Courier published a sensationalized retrospective article under the headline, "Fire from Heaven, or were they flames from hell that turned 2 sisters into human torches?" The write-up dramatically revisited the 1899 events, openly questioned whether something supernatural had been at work. It recounted the tale with spooky embellishments, even suggesting the girls might have fallen victim to spontaneous human combustion, SHC. The mysterious phenomenon of a person bursting into flames for no known external reason. This late-century retelling amped up the eerie elements and seemed to imply that the Kirby sisters' death was not a mere accident at all, but possibly fire from heaven or flames from hell. The article leaned heavily on the unexplained aspects. No source of ignition found, flames supposedly seen rising from the girls' bodies, a simultaneous timing. One detail in the 1985 piece claimed that flames were seen shooting from Amy's head, a dramatic image that had never actually been reported in 1899. The original witness had simply said flames were coming from her, not specifically from her head. By tweaking quotes and omitting mundane details, the Courier's story cast the Kirby case firmly as a paranormal mystery and left readers to imagine diabolical, otherworldly forces at play. Hilda, the younger sister of Alice and Amy, born years after their deaths, was by then an old woman. She expressed shock at reading the dramatic headlines about her family. Hilda was upset that the 1985 article aired some private family matters, like the fact that John and Sarah had been temporarily separated in 1899, and that it implied the girls' burials were tainted by superstition. "We've always been a church-going family," Hilda protested, saddened that anyone would think a whiff of devilry had hung over her sisters' graves. In the wake of renewed interest, theories abounded, each more startling than the last. The most provocative idea was that the girls fell victim to spontaneous human combustion, a phenomenon in which a person is said to catch fire due to mysterious internal causes. SHC has been a topic of fascination for centuries. It's a label applied to cases where victims are found burned to ash with no obvious external ignition source. True SHC cases are characterized by intensely high burn temperatures and inexplicably limited fire damage to the surroundings. Often the body is destroyed, while nearby objects remain unscathed. Classic accounts of SHC, however, usually involve elderly or infirm individuals who are alone, sometimes near an open flame like a candle or pipe. And many have been heavy drinkers, leading earlier generations to dub SHC the drunkard's burning. The Kirby sisters' case does not fit the typical SHC profile at all. These were children, not incapacitated adults, and their bodies were not reduced to ash. They were alive when rescued. Their burns were severe, but not fatal. Yet the sheer oddness of two separate fires at the same moment opened the door for SH believers to claim the event as evidence of something truly supernatural. Some went so far as to suggest that demonic forces or a curse might have been responsible. After all, the 1985 tabloid headline explicitly asked if the flames came from hell, reflecting a long-held fake belief that spontaneous fires could be the work of the devil. British writer Michael Harrison, in a 1982 book on unexplained fires, even theorised that poltergeists could ignite humans from the inside out. To those inclined to see the hand of the paranormal, it was easy to imagine the Kirby sisters as targets of some malefic entity or divine wrath. Two innocent girls sacrificed in flames as an ominous sign or punishment.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to entertain my kids without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids started using it right away and haven't stopped since. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more at no screens or ads. Now through December 1st, Yoto is having its biggest sale of the year. Check out yotoplay.com.
You know what's wild? Most people are still overpaying for car insurance just because it's a pain to switch. That's why there's Jerry. Jerry's the only app that compares rates from over 50 insurers in minutes and helps you switch fast with no spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Before you renew your car insurance policy, do yourself a favor. Download the Jerry app or head to jerry.ai/ACAST.
I was outraged, I tell you, when I read that bit about them not being allowed to be buried in consecrated ground. I was like, these are children. I really hate that. There's one in particular that really sticks with me, and it's Kitty J's grave on Dartmoor. And because she was pregnant out of wedlock, I have done this story before, that she was buried at the crossroads, I think it was. And it's just like, really? Really? And I know we can look back, it's years ago, but really? And don't get me wrong, I'm all for fake beliefs and superstition, but don't turn them against women or girls, please. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this story. Do you think human combustion? Fire from hell? I don't know. It's just, it really is a strange coincidence. And those poor parents. Poor parents. I was actually scolded as a child in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And that was water that spilled over me after my mum was doing something and the jug exploded. Must have been like thermal, whatchamacallit. Yes. I can't remember. I've got the scar, but I can't remember because I was only about 2. I like to think that I don't get burnt now. I do all the time when I'm cooking dinner. I always go for it without gloves on, you know, getting in there, getting those roast potatoes out. I'm always burning my hands. But I like to think that I can take more burn pain than others now after my experience of scolding. I'm still trying to find my supernatural powers, guys. Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed and I hope it made you question what went on. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to entertain my kids without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids started using it right away and haven't stopped since. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more at no screens or ads. Now through December 1st, Yoto is having its biggest sale of the year. Check out yotoplay.com.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base, plus free premium delivery. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
Hey guys, it's Paige from Giggly Squad, and if you're anything like me, holiday shopping has officially started. And you know where I'm going? Ulta Beauty. They have the cutest gift sets right now, like the Sol de Janeiro, Shea Rosa, and Cheer Perfume Mist Trio. It smells so good. I've been misting it everywhere. On me, on the street, on my pillow. It's a whole vibe. I'm obsessed with the Tarte Kindness Cafe Collector Set. It's packed with everyday makeup must-haves, and it's honestly too cute to wrap. And if you need a cozy little self-care moment, the Moroccan Oil Hand Care Essentials Kit is luxe, hydrating, and smells delicious. Don't worry if you can't decide right now. An Ulta Beauty gift card is the perfect gift for everyone. So whether you're gifting your bestie or yourself, make the season yours and head to Ulta Beauty today. Ulta Beauty, gifting happens here.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.